You tell yourself, okay, I see it now, right? I see the areas in my life I don't feel safe, and I named them, I wrote them down. And now you're here. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. So you start thinking, okay, now what? What do I do with this? Where do I even start? Because knowing something isn't safe is one thing, but figuring out how to move forward without making everything feel worse, that's a different thing, right? So now you're left sitting here, confused, stuck, aggravated, overwhelmed. And instead of moving forward, you slow down or you just completely stop. You hesitate. Not because you don't want to change, but because you just don't feel safe enough to do that yet. So today, I'm going to help you figure out how to create something, a foundation, using the method of stabilization, so you can move forward in this process without feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, confused, or lost. But before we get into that, let me introduce myself. Hi. My name is Rose, and I'm your host here at A Sister's Love Podcast, and I'm just one woman with one voice trying to help women heal one story at a time. And if you're a woman who is in the beginning stage of their healing journey and don't know where to start and is searching for resources, support, and education, then you are in the right place. I would love for you to become part of our sisterhood. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss another episode of A Sister's Love Podcast. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Sister Let's Heal Together, where we keep these conversations going, share our stories, and support each other along the way. All right, so let's jump right into it. Like I promised in episode 6, today we're going to talk about creating a safety plan, right? And if you're listening and you're like, wait, what safety plan? Then you probably need to go back and listen to episode 6 first, because in episode 6, we identified the areas of our life that feels unsafe. And I told you not to do anything with that yet, because I didn't want you to jump ahead and get overwhelmed and then feel lost. I need you to be able to process what you just discovered, because too much, too fast equals what? Overwhelm, confusion, anxiety, overthinking, and sometimes spiraling. And we're not doing that here. So at any moment while we're doing this work, at any moment that you start feeling overwhelmed, I need you to stop. Put down the pen, put down the paper, and sit back and breathe. Regulate your nervous system for a second. If you're like anything like me, we used to do something in therapy. It's called like the box where you go, you dot, exhale, inhale, exhale, exhale. So you breathe through your nose, exhale through your mouth. And if you accidentally make a square or big ass rectangle, it doesn't matter. All you need to do is regulate your nervous system. Bigger breaths, longer breaths, it doesn't matter. Or you can do something that I love, is singing. It's humming. Hum your favorite song. Just, oh, Happy Days, one of mine. All I need you to do is regulate your nervous system so we can get the work done. Okay? So if this happens to you, pause, regulate first, and then come back to this work. Now, let's get back on track. If you listen to episode 6 and you actually sat down and identified the areas in your life that feel safe, I want to stop and congratulate you real quick, because that part is really, really hard. Looking at your life, naming what doesn't feel safe can trigger you. It makes you think, damn, how did I even get here? You know, life can be messy, and trying to sort it out is a lot. So if you did that work and you're still here, amen, baby. A round of applause for you. I want to give you your flowers, baby, for a second, because I'm going to need you to bring all that same energy back into this next part, because now we're about to start building that plan, and it's going to be hard. And I promise you, it's going to bring up some shit, and it's going to feel like a tornado. And since I'm from Buffalo, it's going to feel like a goddamn snowstorm, a whiteout. You can't see nothing in front of you. And that's exactly how we're going to do this. One step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. So I'm going to need you to strap in, put your seatbelt on, I'm gonna need you in the driver's seat, 2 hands on wheel. Okay, you're in charge of this car. Your eyes need to be open. You need to be present, and you need to be willing. And whatever motivation, whatever willingness, whatever strength you had to do part 1, I'm gonna need you to bring that back here. I'm gonna bring that energy over here. Because we're going to be digging, we're going to be looking at things we might not want to look at, and we're going to be touching things we usually avoid. But we're doing it, all right? I am back on task. Before we start building this plan, we need to talk about what makes this plan possible. And the word we're working with today is stabilization. So we're going to talk about what stabilization is, why it matters in this healing process, and why it's necessary for creating safety, and how we're going to use it to build safety in the areas that we already identified. And just like always, I'm going to be doing this the best way I know how, by using me as an example. So you can see yourself in it. I hope that's okay. Let's get into what stabilization is. So if we go by the textbook definition, and I had to look this up, stabilization is defined as the process of becoming or making something steady and unlikely to change. That's the textbook version. And I don't really like it. So let me tell you what stabilization means to me and how I'm using it in this process of healing, right? For me, stabilization means creating a foundation, like a solid place for me to stand. When I say stabilization, I'm talking about stabilizing my life, my thoughts, my behaviors, my feelings, the way I react, the way I move through life. I'm using stabilization as a process to help us deal with the feelings, the behaviors, the things that we're seeing, the things that we're experiencing in a healthy way. Because a lot of the times, the things that we feel is out of control are things causing overwhelm. They're causing confusion. They're causing anxiety. They're causing depression. So stabilization is about slowing those things down so that we can stay in the present moment. It keeps us from wandering off into places that don't make sense mentally or emotionally. And that's why stabilization is so important in this process. Because if we cannot maintain what we're learning, what good is it? You can learn how to ride a bike, right? But if it's not safe for you to ride the bike, what does it matter that you learned how to ride a bike? You have to create an environment where it's safe to practice. That's what stabilization does. It makes it safe for us to practice the things that we're learning. So if I'm learning self-esteem, I cannot just learn in theory. I have to create a plan that allows me to practice self-esteem. That means stabilizing my environment, the people around me, my behaviors, my routines, so that I can actually use the skills, not just talk about them. That's what stabilization is, and that's what we're doing here. And stabilization also helps us create 2 types of plans. A short-term plan for when something is happening right now, like when fight, flight, or freeze kick in, when our nervous system is active, when you feel yourself kind of spiraling. Stabilization teaches you how to regulate yourself in that moment, but it also helps you to create a long-term plan. That's a day-to-day thing that you can add into your life slowly and stabilize everything around you over time. And you need both, because you can do all the day-to-day work you want, but life still is going to happen. Something is still going to knock you off your ass, right? It's going to trick you. And the goal isn't to never get knocked down. The goal is knowing how to get up. Having the tools, having the support, and having something to lean on when this happens. That's what stabilization gives you. And it's kind of like a crutch. If you break a leg and you don't have crutches or a wheelchair, you're stuck, right? Stabilization teaches you how to use the crutch. It helps you to identify what do you need to lean on and what do you need. It don't mean you're going to need it forever, but you need it for the moment, right? Because eventually your leg is going to heal and your crutches is not going to be used anymore, but you'll still have those benefits, right? And you need those things in your healing process. So we'll create crutches, but the crutches will change as the healing progress. Because sometimes you might need a wheelchair, you might need crutches, and sometimes you can transition into a cane. The process will change, the crutch will change, but we'll still understand that we need those things in the process of healing. All right, so let's move into the next part. And the way we're going to do this is by using a process that I like to call the 5 W's. Not actually the 5W. It's really 5 W's and an H, but I don't know what else to call it because it's easier just to say the 5 W's because it has 5 W's. So we're going to call it that. All right, back on topic. So the 5 W's, the who, the what, the where, the when, the why, and then the how. And we're going to use this process to help us break down the areas that we already identified in episode 6. Not just the areas itself, but the inside the areas that need safety. Because just because an area feels unsafe doesn't mean everything inside that area is unsafe. So the process helps us to slow down and actually see what's going on. Let's start with the who. Who in this area makes you feel safe? Who in this area makes you feel unsafe? Then the what. What happened in this area that made you feel unsafe? And what experiences stood out for you? Then where. Where were you when this happened? And what environment makes you feel better or worse? Then when. When did this happen? Was this in childhood, adulthood, a specific relationship, a specific time in your life? And then we move into the how. How do you react around this person? How do you react when the situation comes up? How do you behave in this environment? How do you respond when that memory pop up? How do you talk? How do you protect yourself, right? When I say how, I'm talking about how your behaviors, your reaction, your thoughts, everything that shows up automatically for you. And then we get to the why. Why do you think that you react this way? Why do you feel like this person can do these things to you? Why do you feel like the situation will have power over you? The why helps us understand the meaning behind the reaction. And here's the important part, right? The who, the what, the where, the why. Those parts of us are the triggers. The who identify the people who trigger us. The where identify the memories that trigger us. The where identify the places that trigger us. And the what identify the behaviors that triggers you. And the how shows us the patterns that we have, unhealthy coping mechanisms in all the stuff that we do. And that's the why help us understand why these coping mechanisms even exist in the first place, in the areas that we need to work on in ourselves. And once we have all that information, we can create a plan. Fair warning, it might feel like we're repeating the same question over and over and over again. I promise you it's necessary. Okay, so stay with me. For the next part, I'm going to walk you through an example using my life so we can actually see how to use the 5 W's. Hopefully it will help you understand better and make this process a little easier. All right, let's get into that. So let's get into the creating the plan, right? We're going to do this together. First, we're going to identify the areas in our life that we need to create safety in, which we already did, right? And I'm going to use an example from when I was doing my plan. In that example I'm going to use for today is going to be relationships. I'm going to talk about relationships that make me feel safe and a relationship that doesn't make me feel safe. So let's start with the relationship. I'm going to keep this simple and just talk through with one of these examples, right? I'm not going to go into all multiple relationships, right? So we're going to do the 5 W's. Let's start with the who. Who in my life makes me feel safe? And who in my life who doesn't make me feel safe? And the relationships that makes me feel safe is the relationship I have with my sister. And the relationship that doesn't make me feel safe is the relationship that I have with my kid's father. And so let's break it down. And we're going to start with the safe one first. Then we're going to go into the unsafe one. So let's talk about the relationship that I have with my sister. So why she is the one that makes me feel safe. So what happened in that relationship that makes me feel safe? She makes me feel secure. She hears me. She listens to me. She doesn't judge me. She opens up to hearing me, and she allows me to make mistakes without judgment. Now let's talk about when. When did this relationship started to feel safe? When did the closeness happen, right? This happened in my adulthood, right? As I got older, we started to lean on each other a little bit more, and we got closer. Now let's talk about where. Where did this safety really show up for me? I remember a time when me and my kid's father were going through some shit, right? And his mom kicked us out the house, and I left with him. We had nowhere to go. My sister let us stay with her. Even though she didn't like him, she loved me. She supported me. And that moment, she showed me that no matter what choices I made, she will always have my back. She showed me that she will always be a safe place for me. Now, let's talk about how. How do I act when I'm around her? I act like me. I feel free. I feel confident. I feel like myself. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's just like I could just be me around her. And then the why. Why do I act like this around her? Because she gives me the space to be me without trying to change me. She gives me room to see who I am and decide for myself if I like who I am. She holds me accountable, but she doesn't use my mistakes against me. She doesn't love me conditionally, right? She holds me responsible for my action, but she still loves me at the end of the day, and I do the same for her. And if we need space from each other, we give it, and we always find our way back to each other. Now, let's move on to the unsafe relationship. Who in my life makes me feel unsafe in relationship? And like I said before, my kid's father. What happened in that relationship that made me feel unsafe? He was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and financially abusive. When did this start? We met in high school, and then the financial abuse happened when we adulthood. His family drained my bank account a lot. I don't really want to go into it. When my finances kind of like went low is when it kind of spiraled a little bit more. So where did this happen, right? It happened in our relationship, in our adulthood. It happened in our home. It happened at his mom's house. It happened in the car. I remember one time when we were driving and he was hitting me, and I pulled over on the expressway and said that we both about to die right here, right now. He panicked and he made me start the car. He begged me. And still to this day, driving that expressway, it triggers me because I remember that exact space right where we at in the exact moment. Every time I pass it, I remember that. So yeah, and let's get to the why. Why do I react the way I do? Because I don't trust him. I don't trust myself enough to walk away emotionally. I feel like I still have something to prove. That's why I am not the same person I used to be, right? I'm not that person that used to beat. So every time I'm around, I had a point to prove, right? I have to prove that I am stronger. You don't have power over me. So I act the way I act because I allow him to have this control over me. So now we have both, right, laid out in front of me, right? What can I learn from the relationship that I have, with my safe relationship with my sister that I have, and then the unsafe relationship I have with my kid's father? Because at the end of the day, he is still the father of my kids, and I still have to have a relationship with him. So how do I use that? How can I use what I learned in my safe relationship with my sister that I can transfer into the relationship that I have with my kid's father? So that's what we're about to walk into. We're going to take what we already know, we're already using, already have learned, and already have been practicing, and try to take those tools and implement it into spaces that we're not using them in. Now let's move into the unsafe relationship. Who in my life makes me feel unsafe in relationship? My kid's father. What happened in that relationship that makes me feel unsafe? He was verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, financially abusive. When did this happen, right? Or when did it start? We met in high school, and that's when the financial abuse started. He began taking advantage of me financially to the point where him and his family almost drained my bank account. And then when my finances got low, everything else changed, and I felt like I was no longer as valuable to him. Now, let's talk about where did this happen? It happened in our relationship. It happened in my adulthood. It happened in our home. It happened at his mom's house. It happened in the car. I can remember one time when we were driving and he was hitting me, and I pulled the car over on the expressway, and he begged me to start the car because I said, we're dying here right now. he panicked, and eventually I started a car. To this day, every time I drive past that exact moment, it triggers me because I remember exactly where that happened. I can still feel it. Now, let's talk about how I act around him. I get defensive. I get guarded. I get verbally abusive. I'm always ready to fight because I don't trust that man. And finally, the why. Why do I react the way I do? Because I don't trust that man. And I don't trust myself enough to walk away emotionally. I feel like I still have something to prove. That I'm not that same person I used to be. That he cannot treat me the way he used to. But I also know that when I act like that, he still has power over me. So I act the way I act because I feel like I have a point to prove. So now that we have both of those laid out, the question becomes, what can I learn from the relationship that feels safe, and how can I apply that to a relationship that doesn't? Because at the end of the day, he is still a father of my kids, and we still have to have a relationship. So I have to find a safe way to deal with him. So I have to take the skills that I have learned from the relationship that I have with my sister and learn how to take some of the things and apply it to the relationship that I have with him. And that's what we're about to go into next. The things that I have learned that I can apply to my unsafe relationships. What I learned from the relationship that I have with my sister that I can take into the relationship with my kid's father is accountability. I learned how to hold myself accountable for what I am doing and what I am not doing. Not allowing him to have emotional access to being in control of my emotions. Not looking for validation in a relationship to prove that I am no longer the person that I used to be. I don't need his validation. Setting boundaries and removing myself when needed. Protecting my peace. And allowing myself to be me regardless of who is in the room. Now that I talk about what I learned from that safe relationship, let's move into creating a plan for this unsafe one. So remember earlier I said we're going to do two things, a short-term plan and a long-term plan, right? This is where that all comes together. So let's go back. What I already identified, right? What we talked about is the how I act in this unsafe relationship. I said I get defensive, I get guarded, I get verbally abusive, and I always ready to fight. And then the reason I react that way is because I don't trust him. That's when the why comes into place. I react the way I do because I don't trust him. I also don't trust myself enough emotionally to walk away. I still feel like I have something to prove. I feel like I need to show him that I am not that person anymore I used to be. And I cannot be treated this way. So now the questions become based on that how and why. What issue I actually need to work on. Because once I name the issue, I can build a plan. So let's start with that long-term plan. The long-term plan issue I need to work on is skill building. The skills that I need help building are self-esteem, self-validation, self-acceptance, self-control, and self-love. Those are the things I work on over time. Those are things that I practice in my everyday life. Those are things that I help me not to validate from him in the first place. Now, let's talk about the short-term plan, the things that I need to do when I feel triggered. Because even if I'm working on those long-term skills, that doesn't mean that I still won't get triggered. So the way I can regulate myself is breathing, talking to myself, walking away, have a guided conversation, right? Setting boundaries, having a safe word to use in unsafe spaces, having a specific support person, having someone with me when I know I'm going to be around him. So if things do start to escalate, I can have them remove me and help me to get out of that environment. Those are just a few short-term tools that we can use if we feel triggered. So that I can have both in place. I have my short-term tools that can help me handle triggers, and I have my long-term skills I am building this so that I can regulate myself and change my pattern and cycles over time. It is a combined relationship, right? They work together. And the more you build on your long-term, the short-term will be less likely to be triggering, right? The more you build those long-term skills, the less you will become triggered. So this is just a short version of it. It actually goes way deeper than this, and there's a lot more work that gets done than what we can do on this episode. But if we go into all the details and everything, we'll be here for 2 hours, and we're not really trying to do that, right? So what I do have for you, right? You know I got you. I got a worksheet for you. And in that worksheet is going to help you go deeper. It's going to help you break each part down more specifically. It's going to help you really slow this process down, break down the skills that you need, figure out where you're getting stuck, and even identify where you can go to help build those skills that you haven't. So before we end this episode, I want to do a quick recap of the plan, right? When you creating a safety plan, the first thing you need to do is identify the areas in your life that doesn't feel safe. Second, you need to identify the areas within the areas that feel safe, because just because something feels unsafe doesn't mean everything inside that area is unsafe. So we're going to identify what feels safe and then what feels unsafe within that, right? How we're going to do that, we use the 5 W's and H. The who, the what, the where, the when, the how, and the why. Remember what that means. Who makes you feel safe and unsafe? What happens? When did it happen? Where did it happen? How did you react? And why do you react the way you do? After that, we compare what safety looks like and unsafety looks like. And then we try to take some of the skills and behaviors that we already are using in the safe areas and start applying to the unsafe areas, because it's easier to use things that we already practice than to force ourselves to learn everything brand new at once. So we can start with what we already know how to do, and we can implement that into the right way, and we can move it and slowly add the new things that we're building into those processes. After that, we create a short-term plan and a long-term plan. The long-term plan is based on how and why we react the way we react. And we use those statements to figure out what areas are lacking in and what skills we need to build over time. The short-term plan is for your triggers. This is about regulating, and that's about what you can do right now to help you feel safe. That can be internal, external. It can be breathing. It can be walking away. It can be using support person. And that's it for creating a plan. And I really, 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 really hope that it helped you. I really do. And one more thing before we leave, be patient with yourself. I know I say this all the time, but we cannot rush this process. This is a long process because we have a long life to live. This is not something that you're going to finish overnight. This is why it is called a process. It is a journey, and healing isn't about the destination. It's about the journey to the destination. Because if we're always focused on, are we there yet? You're missing everything along the way. You're missing the moments, the people, the growth, the experiences, the setbacks, right? The getting back up. When you're only focused on getting there and you get frustrated, you get overwhelmed, you start thinking something is wrong because you're not there yet. But when you're focused on the journey, your perspective change, you start noticing what's actually happening and you start seeing yourself differently. So I say all this to say that this process is one step at a time. And I also want to say thank you for being here with me. Thank you for allowing me this space with you. Time is valuable, and it's something that we do not get back. And I truly, truly appreciate you choosing me to spend your time with. And I really hope that something that I shared today give you a little more clarity about what's going on in your life and how you can start changing it. If you're not on our Facebook group, or if you're not in our Facebook group, I would love for you to be part of our sisterhood. Everything that I talk about in these episodes is inside that group. And I know questions are going to come up, and the best place for me to really answer those are inside the Facebook group. I can see your comments on YouTube, but trying to keep up with all those questions and everything across all platforms is really hard. So I really, really would love for you to just be in a Facebook group where I can help you on a more intimate level. So until next time, sign out, your sister Love Rose. Bye.